George Elder, and I'm the president and operator of Adonai Software. Welcome. What we're about to cover is to show you how easy it is to import web services into IronSpeed Designer. And the topic of this block of training is calling web services, calling a web service to populate a table/grid. First off, let's talk about a little bit. What is a web service? Well, simply put, a web service is a method of communication between two electronic devices via the web. Web services has many uses. Well, let's discuss some of them. First off, web services allows you to expose some of your functionality over the network and i.e. Over the web. Web service is a unit of managed code that can be remotely invoked using HTTP, which is the hypertext protocol. That is, it can be activated via HTTP requests. So web services allows you to expose functionality of your existing code over the network and over the web. Let's move on. Next, connecting different applications interoperably. That's just really powerful stuff. Web services allows different applications to talk to each other and share data and services among themselves. Really powerful. Also, other applications can also use the services of the web services. For instance, if you set up some methods and properties, other people or other applications can take advantage of that. And they don't even have to be in the same technology. For instance, Java or other technologies could take advantage of web services, and vice versa. Web services is used to make application platform and technology independent. Very powerful stuff. Also, standardized protocols, meaning that you do it all at the same time and you get the same results. And the low cost of using the communication, like using SOAP. If you don't know what SOAP means, it's the Simple Object Access Protocol, and that's on top of the HTTP protocol. And the communication is a lot cheaper than using the business-to-business communication as well as EDI. So, for instance, the web services can also be implemented on other reliable transport mechanisms like FTP and etc. And what you'll need for this exercise, or this block of training, is that you need the IronSpeed Designer, of course. Current version is the best. The current version of the .NET Framework 4, that's what we'll be using. The Microsoft Visual Studios 2010, 2008 could work, as well as 2005 if you had to. Copy of the most recent Acme IronSpeed Designer example. You may download the Acme order management system at http://www.ironSpeed.com/products/sampleapplications.aspx. And the reason why you need the sample application is the underlying database, which uses the Northwind database, and the shippers table is what we'll be using, and preferably IIS 7.0 or 7.5. Let's reiterate that web service has a couple of more uses. One is reusable application components. There are things applications need very often, so why make the same thing over and over? Web service can offer application components like currency conversions, weather reports, or even language translations and services. The connection in existing software. Web services can help to solve the interoperability, and we already talked about that, the problem by giving different applications a way to link their data. With web services, you can exchange data between different applications and different platforms, so no surprise there. Web services, platform element, SOAP, we talked about that. That's the Simple Object Access Protocol. It also uses UDDI, which is Universal Description, Discovery, and Integration. And WSDL is the term, WSDL, which is the Web Service Description Language. And all three are important. Well, the best thing to do is to create an application. And if you use the underlying Northwind database, it's probably either in the Access database, or if you've made a SQL Server database with the Northwind database. You can also download the Northwind database in the Microsoft network. And you want to pick the shippers table. And simply we just created a simple application to get the shippers record. Well, once you've created the application, you should come up with the shippers table. And the shippers table basically has three company names: the Speedy Express, United Package, and Federal Shipping. And those are the three companies that are in the shippers table. Well, with that in respect, I created another table off the horizontal menu page, which you right click and you create a new page. And I named my page the Web Services Table .aspx. And on that page I created a grid, something to communicate with the web services when I do bring it up. And essentially I just left it as the default, my grid. You can get this code on a CCW as to making a grid. And the code is simply put here. It's basically named my grid, that's the ID, and it has pagination as well as all the particulars when it comes to adding a grid to an ASP.NET application or page. The best way to do it is you run your page and you build it, and you'll have the Web Services Table .aspx, and if you look here, it's sitting on one of the cells, and just make sure you have the cell editor on and copy and paste that code in there, and you save it and run it. And the next thing I would do is I would create a web services folder to hold your web services that you're going to implement into IronSpeed. First thing is to bring up Visual Studios, and once you have Visual Studios, you right click on the project and you go and you add a web services. And down here you'll have web services.asmc, and that's the extension that it uses, and I gave it a name specifically web services for access to a table. And as you notice here, I named it web services for table access. And once it created the table, and we'll go over that later, or actually when it created the web services was created under the web services folder, and that's just for some organization. As I said, that you can go to the CCW and add a web service, and the code is in the right hand side of adding a web service to your application. And we're going to go over this later, but essentially you have to take the web services and add a reference to it. And I used the local host, and I basically brought up the web services that I created earlier and put some what they call web functions in the web services so that you may get information or add information via the services. And one of the things that I use the most would be get shippers, and essentially that will get all the shippers data via web services, and we'll go over that later. Once you've created the web services, it has a reference, and under the folder localhost, you will see the web services for table access, and it will make those three protocols that we talked about, and one of them is the WSDL. And what we're going to concentrate on is creating a web services to collect all the information about the shippers. And for instance, I created a connection through the SQL Server connection, and I created a web method, as we talked to before. And a web method essentially is just creating web with this descriptor here, the web method, and in parentheses, basically it tells you about the description of the web method. And I used a function that has get shippers, and I turned the get shippers into a data set. And I created an adapter, a SQL Server adapter, and I select everything from the shippers table, and I use the underlying connection. I created a ship data set as a data set, which I basically created a new data set, which initialized the data set. Otherwise, you'll probably get an error. And the next thing is the adapter, and the missing schema action equals the missing schema action, and you add with the key, which is the primary key, and then you take the adapter and you fill the data set, and you give the table name next to it, which is the shippers. And I closed the connection and I disposed of it. And the next thing is you return, via the function, you return a ship data set. Hi, let's put this in live action. Well, as you can see, I brought up the application wizard, and with the application wizard I went to the Northwind database and I created a bunch of pages. I also deleted a bunch of pages, I think there were 8. So I'm just using the basic, the enhance, and the add, edit, and edit table. You go through the whole sequence of creating the page. I'm not going to do that because we've already got it created, but essentially you create a directory under the shippers table, the application namespace, using the Visual Studio's 2010 4.0, and then I didn't create any stored procedures because it's already done. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. And there's a couple of things that I want to go over first before we continue, is that if you're using C#, then this would be using, and if you're using VB, it would be imports. And a couple of things that are very important that you put on any of your web services pages, and that's system.web and services and protocols. That's the namespace that you need, as well as the shippers business. And the reason why you need shippers business is a part of the data access layer. The shippers SQL table is going to communicate through IronSpeed to the web service that you will create in Visual Studios. And one of the things is you create a web services object that communicates with the local host web services for table access, as we talked about earlier. And then it gets the web services credentials into to verify who's in it, and you can bring back, and this is only bringing back the update shippers record, which we will not cover in this application, but we will cover to get the information. To get the information only and put it in the shippers table. And essentially, as I talked earlier, we created the web services table page. And if you look at the web services table page, I created a method, and it's called load grid control, and it's talking to the my grid control, which we put on the page earlier. And with the my grid control, it's going to take you're going to create web services, which is, as we saw earlier, and then you're going to take the web services and get shippers, and you're going to as we saw earlier with the get shippers method, web method, we're going to take that web method and put it into a data set. And in that data set, we're going to take it and force it into a data set into the data source of my grid. And we're going to put the data source into a session variable and take that and bind the grid and make it visible. And the reason why we're using the session variable is so that we can have pagination, where the page paginates, but it won't in this case because we only have 3 objects. So, and we call that method right before we get the data. And the way it looks, and we'll show you that first before we get into the more specific, is that we have our web grid, and we call it the page. Takes just a second to run it. Take a few more seconds. And as you can see, that I created a table slash grid with the shipper's ID and the company name and phone, and this all came from the web method get shippers, and it's communicating with the web services. And let's get into see how this is done. Well, we'll go into Visual Studios. Takes a second for it to come out. Well, while this is loading, and what we're going to do is show you how that I referenced the web services and created the web services in Visual Studios. And once we've created the web services, we take the web services and list a set of methods, web methods, so that later on we can call those web methods through the web services reference. And the web services reference, we can access that any time and bring back that information. Now that we have this back up, we're essentially in the web services table page, which we've seen earlier. So here is the code that we talked to before, and essentially I have a connection string with the connection, the SQL Server connection, and you have to initialize it by using a new keyword, and essentially for C# is the same. Up here we have the web script as well as the web service, and the name of the web namespace for the web service I used localhost shippers. What you could use, it creates a service namespace by default, and I think it's called temporary and .org, and you don't want to use that. I mean, you could use it, but it doesn't define your web service. And so essentially I just pointed to my web service that is MX not protocol, but the MXDX extension. And let's take a look at that. If you go down here to the web service folder that I created, remember that, and then I also created the web service, which created the web service code behind. And we're going to take a look at that code. So we're looking at it right now. And with that code, there is web methods that we create. And it's important that you put the web method first, and the underscore, and then your function. Or sub. Doesn't have to just be a function, but essentially in this case we use functions. So essentially I use the @shippers record as well as the delete shippers record, and that's all a web method that I could call to delete one of the shippers, as well as the update. And to call your web services, or this actually disposes of your web services. To call your web services, you need to call those methods. And also, you need to have the namespace and have it binded. Well, let's go up and look at how that we reference. Well, you have here an application web references. You just right-click on it, and you add a service reference. And this is very important because you could discover, remember that WSDL? You can discover your web services by, stand by pointing to it. That didn't work. Well, I don't want to destroy what I've already created, but here you can, under the namespace, you can name it localhost, and we'll go localhost 1 because we don't want to. We already have a localhost. So you hit the advanced, and it brings up a dialog page. And then once you're done, you can add the web services to the form. Now, first we need to find it. So you hit discover. That's what we need to do. You hit discover, and it discovers your web services. In the web services, you click on it, and it will bring all the web methods into operation. You click on your web services, and it shows that I have an @shippers record, a delete shippers record, get service or get shippers. Remember what I was talking about, and the update shippers record. And once you've identified those operations as well as the services, you click on the advanced, and then here you can have the access level for generate classes. Of course, it's public, but you can change that or generate asynchronous operations, or you can always generate message contracts and the dictionary, and you can reuse all reference assemblies, which is listed below, or you can go with just specific reference assemblies. And once you're done, which I basically left it generic or default, you can add the web reference, and that gives you different. You can find your web reference through the web services in this solution, or on the local machine, which will look on your local machine, or you can use the UDDI server on the local network, which will query all the web services that are in effect. And essentially, if you click on the web services for table access, click on that, and it essentially highlights all the web services and the web reference name. And you can add it, but I'm not going to do that. And once you add it, the web services comes up right under the application. Oops, let's get out of here. After the application, let's make this bigger so you can see. The application web references and localhost. And it's very important if you use localhost, or if you want to use something else besides localhost, if you have a domain that you want to use, like for instance Microsoft.com, Google.net, or whatever. But for this example, we're using localhost. So that's how it looks. So remember, you have under the web services, let's get out of here so you can actually see what's going on. Whoops, and that brings up the wrong form. We need to hit the code view, and which will basically bring up all the web methods. We've got those web methods. The connection, I created a separate connection because this is going to a data set and not specifically to a web or a table in ISP Designer, but you'll get the inference. The next thing is, if you come up here where the web reference is, you also see the same, and it hasn't changed. Okay. Also, up here in the data layer, you can view the shippers SQL table, and essentially the shippers SQL table will assist you with bringing back all the web methods that you created in the web services. And you can get this information on the CCW on how to create all this. And essentially you instantiate the object that will communicate with the web services, and that would be my web services, which is web services or web service for table access, as we discussed earlier. And if you get out of Visual Studios and go back to IronSpeed and you run it, it will essentially bring up the web services and the communication that I had placed in it before. And as you can see, the shipper's ID, the company ID, and the phone, everything is all brought back using web services. So I will, if there is a need to get the code and a copy of this video, you can email me at gelder@AdonaiSoftware.com, and we'll provide that information below later on. Okay. Lastly, I wanted to show you how to check your web services in Visual Studios before you import it into IronSpeed Designer. And the simple way is just right click on that ASPX, or I'm sorry, the ASMX app file, and you view in browser. And in a second you'll see come up with several web methods, and each web method has a link. And for instance, if I get shippers, it returns, remember that description that I put in there? It says returns Northwind shippers. That's exactly what it does. And essentially use the invoke method to invoke the SOAP object to talk over HTTP. Let's do that. Okay? And as you can see, it creates a XML page with reference to the shippers table and the shipper's ID, as well as the shipper's name, as well as the phone number. And this information is imported in IronSpeed via XML and the SOAP object. Let's go over a quick debrief of what we covered. First, we created a web services, and we created a web methods to use in our web services. We called the web services from IronSpeed Designer, and we displayed a table/grid in IronSpeed Designer using the web services. We'd like to conclude by thanking you for participating in this presentation If you would like to contact the presenter for a copy of this PowerPoint or video, please contact gelder at AdonaiSoftware.com or the information down below. And you can also go to our website, www.adonaisoftware.com. And thank you.